Hello there, welcome to my review of the Rockford Files Season 6, Episode 4, Love is the Word, written by David Chase and directed by John Patterson. The episode begins with a returning Catherine Harold, once again playing blind therapist Megan Doherty, watering her plants when Jim arrives. It appears they have remained friends since the last time we saw her, but have been losing touch.
Long time no see.
Oh, honey, I'm sorry I haven't called.
Jim doesn't notice it, but Megan seems to want to tell him something.
Jimmy.
Honey, you would not believe this, dear.
We then cut to Jim being awoken from a nap by a knock at the door from a Jeffrey Smith, who we discover is an architect and another close friend of Megan's.
I wish you'd called first.
That night, after a Barbara Mandrell concert, Megan reveals that Jeffrey is actually her fiancé, news which Jim accepts with good grace, but he's clearly hurt by.
Megan, I'm glad for you, really.
Megan explains that they are old friends who recently reconnected, and hints that he's a lot like Jim, without the instability of someone who just floats in and out of her life. Alone in his trailer, we get a rare show of emotion from Jim that betrays his true feelings for Megan, having lost her because of his own relaxed attitude towards her. We then cut to her getting a call from a slightly wasted Jeffrey, asking after someone called Randy. This is another distinctive opening to an episode where, similar to a lot of David Chase episodes, we get far more character than plot. The whole thing has an uneasy quietness from the start that heavily hints towards bad things happening, but all of those bad things are emotional gut punches towards Jim. It's made very clear that Megan hasn't done anything wrong, as their relationship was never serious by mutual agreement, and Jim made no efforts to make it anything more than casual, but as is usually the case in these situations, one person is more invested than the other, and in this case it is Jim, who clearly didn't know what he had until it was gone. It would have been almost unthinkable to start an episode like this in one of the earlier seasons, and was still a big risk, only partially cushioned by returning viewers knowing both characters, especially as they don't do a huge amount to establish the relationship between Megan and Jim, or even explain that Megan is blind. As a new viewer, this particular episode might have begun with the most impenetrable opening in the show's history, but they obviously felt brave enough to do it by season 6. And I think it just about works, although I perhaps would have preferred a slightly faster pace to it, as the pace of the episode is quite oppressively slow. The next day, Jim is at Megan's again, annoyed that she called another private investigator to find out what's going on with Jeffrey and Randy.
It's just a good thing that Mitch knew both of us. Had enough ethics to call me.
Explaining why he's so mad.
How hurt do you think I am, huh?
The tension between the two has increased significantly since the previous evening, and it's a very real portrayal of a couple who never got it together enough to get it together. We find out Randy is Jeffrey's brother and has gone missing, being the spoiled younger brother and a bit of a wild child. He's also a dope dealer for the acting crowd in LA, but before we can find out much more, Megan gets a call from Randy.
Hey, sis. Hey, what's the hap?
Utterly useless and clueless as to where the now missing Jeffrey is. They check in on Randy personally, and Megan gives us a little more info on the Smith brothers, Randy having convinced Jeffrey into investing in a roller rink. Randy is a gigantic flake who does nothing to calm Megan's fears. Quite the opposite, in fact.
Jeffrey wasn't exactly a celibate when he met you, and, well, I'm sure he has his goodbyes to make.
So the search continues. Jim's next move is to break into Jeffrey's office with Megan, where he finds the police outline of a body. A quick trip to the local police station reveals that a man named Barry Spector, a suspected cocaine dealer, is the victim, and Jeffrey is the chief suspect, having been identified by Barry's cousin, Kenny. The Spectres were investors in the roller rink, and Kenny alleges that Jeffrey ripped them both off, getting into a fight with Barry when confronted and killing him. Of course, Megan doesn't believe this version of events, and is worried about Jim's inability to remain unbiased. He manages to convince her that, despite his feelings for her, he still trusts her opinion of Jeffrey and won't let his own feelings colour his investigation. They both then have a heart-to-heart about their relationship and eventually really open up to each other. But, as well written as this scene is, it doesn't quite work for me. Chase is a fantastic writer who was clearly wanting to push the more emotional aspects of character-driven storytelling, as we saw in the previous episode. But due to the nature of episodic television, having not seen Megan or even had Jim speak about her since her last appearance, the nature of their relationship doesn't quite ring true. It feels more like this is a repurposed episode originally about Beth. And for Jim and Beth's relationship, it would have worked perfectly. But I just didn't feel emotionally invested in Megan or their off-screen relationship enough to really care about what's going on. Not with the time that we have with the two of them. Despite the majority of the episode focusing on their relationship, I think it actually drags its heels too much, and is perhaps too subtly done to work in the time given. For me, it is made more ineffective with the investigation element, seemingly tagged on. We've seen Jim form strong emotional attachments to love interests over the course of an episode previously, but I don't think the runtime here is enough to explore that properly during the undoing of a relationship. After Jim and Megan give in to their ongoing attraction to each other, we pick up the mystery element of the story, as the pair overhear Kenny and another man talking about how the police investigation is moving too slowly for them. Jim figures this all actually revolves around Randy, but Kenny and his pal track Randy down first, letting him know that Barry is dead, with Randy stupidly giving up the fact that Kenny wanted Barry dead, to which Kenny confesses that he was the one that actually finished Barry off after his fight with Jeffrey. Kenny kidnaps Randy and his girl just as Megan and Jim show up, Randy getting shot in the foot, while Kenny's goon escapes. With this all now resolved, Jim and Megan return home to find Jeffrey there, where he admits that he was trying to raise the cash that Randy had stolen from the Spectres, unaware that he was wanted for murder the whole time he's been missing. We end at Megan and Jeffrey's wedding, where Randy is bending Rocky's ear, to no avail, so I guess we can be glad at least that he never met Angel. Jim and Megan say their goodbyes and end as just good friends. This is a really hard to quantify episode, where the mystery is not really a mystery and doesn't quite mesh with the story that Chase is trying to tell. It's pretty unsophisticatedly tacked on to the relationship drama that is the main plot, and is unspectacular, which only serves to further undermine the main story. The performances from Garner and Harold are spectacular though, and gives an uncomfortable realism to it that for me is the story's saving grace. We really get the sense that these are two complicated people with complicated feelings that just don't know how they want to move forward, both wanting to remain in both worlds of being and not being together, which is a hard thing to do without descending into melodrama. The trouble is, it's difficult to invest in and is ultimately meaningless, as we know that by the next episode Jim will be back to his old self. And, remarkably, Chase doesn't manage to add any extra dimensions to Jim's character. We've seen him be this vulnerable before. We've seen him deal with the ones that got away before. We've seen him be conflicted about a relationship before. There's nothing new, and I think that is perhaps the episode's greatest failing. This is a character study that doesn't really reveal anything new about the character. So for me, based on performances alone, this is a 3 out of 5. Thank you. Goodbye.